Hamilton thought his Silverstone podium was gone. He had driven through a yellow flag zone on lap 38, right after overtaking Max Verstappen, while Nico Hülkenberg's Audi was stopped near one of the fastest sections of the British Grand Prix. Hamilton admitted he did not see the warning. He expected a penalty, and one FIA decision could have ripped third place away from him after the race had already finished. But then the stewards revealed the twist. No time penalty, no lost podium, only a driving reprimand. And the reason changes everything. The FIA found that Hamilton entered the sector before any yellow flag or yellow light panel was displayed. The first light panel he saw after cops was green, and the yellow warning on his steering wheel appeared only briefly when he was already close to the end of the yellow flag zone. That is not just a lucky escape. That is a major problem for Formula One, because if a driver is expected to react instantly, the warning has to arrive instantly. And at Silverstone, the evidence showed Hamilton may not have had a fair chance to respond before the moment was already almost gone. A late yellow warning, a green light panel, a Verstappen battle, a podium under threat, and an FIA investigation that found no evidence strong enough to take the result away. So the real question is not whether Hamilton avoided disaster. The real question is whether Formula One's warning system was clear enough to protect the drivers before blaming them. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why Hamilton kept his podium, you have to go back to the moment the entire investigation began. Lap 38, Silverstone. Hamilton had just overtaken Max Verstappen. That detail matters more than anything because overtaking Verstappen is never just one move. It does not end the second you get ahead. With Verstappen, the danger usually comes after the pass. He forces you to defend immediately. He makes you check the mirrors. He makes you wonder if the next corner is about to become another fight. So Hamilton was not entering that part of the lap in a calm, controlled bubble. He was still inside the battle. Ahead of him was one of the fastest, most demanding sections in Formula One. Copse, Maggots, and Beckets. Corners where the car is loaded with speed, where the steering feels heavy, where the smallest hesitation can cost time, position, or control. Behind him was Verstappen. And somewhere in that same high-speed sequence, Nico Hülkenberg's Audi had stopped, triggering the yellow flag situation that put Hamilton under investigation. On paper, the rules sound simple. When there is a yellow flag, a driver must slow down. He must show a clear reduction in speed. He must be ready for danger. He cannot keep treating that section like a normal racing zone. That rule exists for a serious reason. It protects marshals. It protects drivers. It protects everyone near the incident. A yellow flag is not decoration. It is a warning that the race has entered a dangerous moment. So at first, Hamilton looked exposed. He had driven through the yellow flag zone. He admitted he did not see it. He expected a penalty. And usually when a driver says that himself, the audience starts preparing for the result to change. But the stewards did not look only at the headline. They looked at what Hamilton could actually see. And that is where the case changed. The investigation found that Hamilton entered the relevant sector before any yellow flag or yellow light panel was displayed. In simple terms, he was already moving into the zone before the normal trackside warning was clearly there for him. Then came the detail that made the verdict even more dramatic. The first light panel he encountered after Copse, before Maggots, was green. Green, not yellow. That matters because a Formula One driver at full speed does not process information like someone sitting at home with replays. He reacts to what is in front of him. A green panel tells the driver the track is clear. It tells the brain that the danger zone is not active in that immediate point. So Hamilton was in a high-speed section, defending from Verstappen, looking for signals, and the first clear panel he saw was not warning him to slow. It was telling him the opposite. And then the yellow appeared on his steering wheel. But even that did not fully solve the problem. The yellow indication appeared only when Hamilton was already on the straight toward turn 10, close to the end of the yellow flag zone, and it stayed visible for only a very short time. That is the entire reason this case became more complicated than a normal yellow flag breach. Because this was not a driver ignoring a clear warning for a long distance. This was a driver receiving the warning late, briefly, and in the middle of one of the most intense moments of his race. That is why the FIA could not justify taking the podium away. The stewards still said Hamilton did not fully comply with the single yellow flag requirements. That is why he received a driving reprimand. But they also accepted that the time available for him to react was extremely limited. That difference is everything. A time penalty would have changed the British Grand Prix result. A reprimand recorded that Hamilton should have done more without rewriting the podium. And for Hamilton, that was the difference between disaster and survival. Because after a race like Silverstone, a podium is not just a trophy. It is points. It is momentum. It is proof that the race did not collapse at the final administrative hurdle. Hamilton finished third behind Charles Leclerc and George Russell, and those 15 points mattered even more because Kimi Antonelli's race had fallen apart outside the points. So this was never a small decision. This was a decision with championship weight. And it all turned on a few seconds of information. A yellow flag not shown before entry, a green light panel in front of him, a steering wheel alert that appeared late, a driver still watching Verstappen in his mirrors. That is why the phrase "no evidence" becomes so important here. It does not mean nothing happened. It means the evidence was not strong enough to prove Hamilton deserved a race-changing sanction. And that is a critical difference. Formula One is full of moments where the rulebook looks simple from far away, but becomes complicated inside the car. A yellow flag is obvious on a timing screen, is obvious on a broadcast graphic. It is obvious when you watch the replay calmly after the race. But in the cockpit at Silverstone speeds, after overtaking Verstappen, with the warning appearing late, the situation is completely different. That is why the FIA had to consider context. Not emotion. Context. What did Hamilton see? When did he see it? How long did the warning stay visible? Was there a trackside panel in his immediate field of vision? Was his attention reasonably affected by the battle he had just been in? Those questions decided the case. And they are the reason Hamilton escaped the time penalty. But here is the deeper issue. If a driver can enter a yellow flag zone before seeing a clear yellow signal, and if the first panel he sees is green, then the problem is bigger than one driver's reaction. That becomes a system question. Because Formula One cannot demand instant obedience from drivers if the warning does not arrive in time. It cannot expect perfect reaction to imperfect information. It cannot judge every yellow flag case the same way if some drivers receive clear warnings early, while others receive brief alerts near the end of the zone. That is why this case matters beyond Hamilton. Next time, it could be another driver. It could be a rookie overwhelmed by a fight in traffic. It could be a driver on cold tires after a restart. It could be someone approaching a stopped car with even less time to react. And then the consequences could be much bigger than a reprimand. That is why the FIA's decision protected Hamilton, but also exposed the system. Because the safest warning is not the one that exists somewhere in the data. The safest warning is the one the driver can actually see, understand, and act on before it is too late. And at Silverstone, that is exactly what came into question. But the next layer is where Hamilton's case becomes bigger than a stewarding decision. Because the FIA did not just decide whether Hamilton deserved a penalty. It had to decide whether the evidence was strong enough to take a podium away. That is a completely different level of responsibility. A reprimand says something was not perfect. A time penalty says the result changes. And at Silverstone, changing the result would have meant rewriting one of the biggest moments of the British Grand Prix after the race had already finished. Hamilton had crossed the line third. Charles Leclerc had won. George Russell had finished second. Ferrari had taken a podium with Hamilton at one of the most emotional races on the calendar. Then suddenly, everything depended on a yellow flag investigation. That is why the evidence mattered so much. Not opinion, not outrage, not what fans felt in the moment. Evidence. And the evidence created doubt. Hamilton had entered the sector before the yellow flag or yellow light panel was shown. The first panel he encountered after cops was green. The steering wheel warning appeared late, close to the end of the yellow flag zone. The warning stayed visible for only a very short time. And just before all of this, Hamilton had been fighting Verstappen, watching his mirrors, expecting the counterattack. That combination made a harsh sanction difficult to justify. Because Formula One is not only about what happened, it is about what can be proven. That is the uncomfortable part. From the outside, people see a yellow flag case and want a clean answer. Did Hamilton slow down, yes or no? Did he break the rule, yes or no? Should he be punished, yes or no? But the stewards had to answer something more precise. Did Hamilton fail to fully comply? Yes. Was the evidence strong enough, given the warning timing and visibility, to impose a time penalty? No. That is why the final decision landed in the middle. A driving reprimand. No time penalty. Podium retained. And that middle ground is exactly why the debate exploded. Because both sides could find something to hold on to. Hamilton's critics could say the reprimand proved he did not fully obey the yellow flag requirement. Hamilton's defenders could say the lack of a time penalty proved the warning system did not give him a fair chance to react. And both arguments contain part of the truth. That is what makes this so interesting. The FIA did not say Hamilton was perfect. It said the situation was not clear enough to punish him, as if the warning had been obvious. And that distinction is everything. Because if the stewards had given Hamilton a time penalty, it would have sent a very different message. It would have said that even a late warning, a green panel, and limited reaction time were not enough to protect a driver from a result-changing punishment. Instead, the FIA chose a more careful line. It acknowledged the breach, but protected the classification. That decision may have frustrated some fans, but it also prevented the race from being decided by evidence that the stewards themselves described as limited. And in a sport where trust is fragile, that matters. Because penalties do not only punish drivers. They teach teams what the FIA values. They teach drivers how future cases may be judged. They teach fans what counts as fair. If Hamilton had lost the podium despite the warning appearing late, every driver on the grid would have noticed. They would have asked, how early does a warning need to be? What happens if the light panel is green? What happens if the steering wheel alert appears near the end of the zone? Are we still fully responsible for information we barely had time to process? Those questions would not disappear. They would follow the next race, the next yellow flag, the next incident, the next investigation. So the FIA's decision was not only about Hamilton. It was about setting a standard for how evidence, visibility, and reaction time should be treated. And that is why this case matters for every driver. Because a Formula One car is not a normal car. A driver cannot glance around casually. He cannot stop and check whether every signal matches. He's managing speed, grip, battery, tires, brakes, radio messages, rival pressure, and danger all at once. The warning system has to cut through all of that.